Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video, and in this video we're finally talking about Celebrity Big Brother. Here I'll be doing a cast assessment for Celebrity Big Brother 3, which, like my other cast assessments, I'll obviously be going through every single player, talking about my thoughts on them, and then eventually give my winner pick at the end of the video. But first, let's talk about some more general things about this cast, namely how underwhelming it is. I mean, obviously there were a lot of rumors coming into the season. To be fair, they're the same rumors as every year. The Boston Robs, the Johnny Bananas, the Tiffany Pollards, the people that obviously people want to see, and we never get those people. But I was never underwhelmed with the previous casts of Celebrity Big Brother. I really liked both Season 1 and Season 2's casts. I knew the majority of those casts coming into it. However, Celebrity Big Brother 3 here, I know very few of these people. I think that is something that is definitely underwhelming to me. And really, before like the rumor mill and everything, like I really only know like 3 of these people, with like a couple other ones like I've heard their names before. But to go along with that, there's also just no one I'm like that excited for on the offset. I mean, with Celebrity Big Brother 1, like I was excited to see Shannon Elizabeth. I was excited to see Mark McGrath. I was excited to see Ross Matthews. I was excited to see Omarosa. I mean, I thought Season 1's cast was a pretty good one. Season 2, I was excited to see Tom Green. I was excited to see Lolo. I was excited to see someone like a Ryan Lochte. But like here, there's no one for me to really get excited over. I don't have a clear person that like I know who this person is. And that is definitely an element of this cast that I do find underwhelming. But at the end of the day, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, it is still Celebrity Big Brother. It is a shortened season of Big Brother that, at the end of the day, like, again, I don't take too seriously anyway. I mean, it really should be a fun ride no matter what. And while I do question some of the casting choices, not necessarily in terms of their popularity, but more so in terms of how into the game they are, I think that to me is the bigger issue with this cast, more so than these being lesser named celebrities. Because again, like I don't think the majority of this cast knows what they're getting into, which, I mean, to be fair, probably most Celebrity Big Brother casts would have that issue as well. But from reading the interviews, you can clearly tell some of these people have no clue what show they're on, which might lead to some humor, but also would be underwhelming from the element of trying to see these people actually play a game. But with that, let's get into the cast itself, and here we will be going through them in alphabetical order, starting off with Carson Cressley, who is one of the few people that I knew on this cast. Again, I had seen him before on Celebrity Apprentice, and I think he's pretty primed to do well enough on Celebrity Big Brother here. Now, I can see him being high variance. Again, I kind of see him as like a Ross Matthews sort of figure, where I think he's a very plateable figure for the most part. I think he's a very well-connected figure for the most part, and I think that will definitely help him in the game here. I do think he can come off as a bit schemy at points, and I definitely can see that playing a factor here. But considering, again, this is a group of celebrities, like I think he should be fine. He's also one of the ones that seems to have done their research, where he talks about how he has talked to previous players and watched celebrity seasons. So it's like, again, like at least he did his research, which is more than you can say about some of the other people we're about to be talking about. So yeah, I do actually have a decent amount of faith in Carson, and because that, he is a potential winner candidate for me. Next up, we're moving on to the first of 2 Chris's. We have Chris Kattan, and Chris Kattan's probably one of the bigger surprises to me on this cast. I mean, by the time of the actual cast reveal, I had a good idea that 9 of these 11 people were going to be on the cast. Chris Kattan was definitely someone that went out of left field, and on paper, I'm excited for Chris Kattan. Again, like I know Chris Kattan, I know who he is. Like, I've seen him on SNL. However, also, he seems to not know what he's doing on this show. I'm watching his interviews. Like, he literally gives, like, 1-sentence responses to all of his questions and just openly admits to the fact that he hasn't watched the show and doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, it seems very clear they're casting him to be this, like, Tom Green figure. However, I feel like Tom Green is just more suited for reality TV than Chris Kattan. I feel like Chris Kattan's going to be a weird figure on this cast. Like, I don't know how much he's going to blend in here. I can definitely see Chris Kattan being a relatively early boot, as he just feels kind of like an outlier here. I mean, maybe he can align with like a Todd Bridges, but like outside of that, like I just don't see him as a natural fit here, because I'm not looking at Chris Kattan as someone that's going to do that well. Next up, we got Chris Kirkpatrick, which again, like, why are we putting not just 2 Chris's, but 2 Chris K's? Like, it's such a weird choice. I don't know what they're going to call them in the house, but Chris Kirkpatrick here, and from NSYNC. I technically knew of him. Again, he's one of these people that, like, I've heard his name before. I didn't know exactly who he was. And I think that's the underwhelming thing about his casting is the fact that of all the NSYNC people, we're getting Chris Kirkpatrick. And, like, obviously Justin Timberlake's, like, way above Celebrity Big Brother. But I mean, like Lance Bass is someone that is such a clear person that would be great on the show. Mind you, I'm pretty sure he said no. And has said no for the last few seasons, but still. I mean, even Joey Fatone, who seems to be willing to do anything, is a much more interesting casting choice to me than Chris Kirkpatrick. But with that said, I actually feel good about Chris Kirkpatrick on this season. Now, I think the biggest issue here for me is, again, kind of similar to Chris Kattan. I don't know where he's going. Like, I don't really see any natural alliances for him on this cast. I do feel like he, again, feels kind of like an outlier, but he does seem to be one of the bigger fans of the show. I mean, he talks about numerous seasons in his interview. Mind, he also mentions that he's a fan of Jackson. But he talks about, like, what, BB14, talks about BB16, BB23. Like, he mentions these seasons. And, like, he is clearly someone that has watched the show. So I'm actually feeling okay about Chris Kirkpatrick, especially from, like, a strategy point of view. However, I just don't really know where he's going socially, as I just don't feel like there's any, like, natural alliances on this cast, and because that, not really a winner candidate for me at the end of the day. Next up, we got Cynthia Bailey, who, again, never heard of this person in my entire life before this cast, but I actually feel okay about Cynthia Bailey here. Now, I don't think she's the greatest casting choice, from what I understand. Her and the other housewife that we'll be talking about, I'm sure contractual reasons were why they can only get these people, but still kind of a weird choice. But Cynthia Bailey, again, from what I understand, is a pretty mellow personality, not the most interesting character in the world. However, I feel like she could do very well here. I feel like this is a cast that seems to be in her corner. I feel like she's essentially this season's version of Candy, who she knows in real life, is also friends with. So it's, again, I'm sure that is going to play a factor into things. And Candy was also, like, one of the better players on Celebrity Big Brother 2. So again, to me, that's a good sign for Cynthia here in terms of her game potential. I just don't think she's going to be that interesting in TV. But again, like, I think she's going to be good enough socially here. And if she can have a decent strategic mind, which I feel like she should be able to, I can definitely see her having a pretty strong run here. So definitely someone I'm considering as a winner candidate. Next up, we're moving on to Lamar Odom, who, again, I knew who he was. That's something. Again, the problem is that he seems to not care about the game at all. And he's essentially this season's version of Meta World Peace. And it's so weird to me they went back to the Meta World Peace sort of casting someone who knows nothing about the game. Where, again, in his interviews, he talks about how he's literally never watched the show before, and he's going to try to watch some after the interview. He's another one that gives really short responses to questions, because, again, I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what to say because he doesn't know the show. Like, while Lamar Odom's probably one of the bigger names on the cast, I guess, he's also really just not in it for the long haul to me. Again, to me, it definitely feels like a Meta World Peace situation where isn't going to really care about the game too much. Now, I will say that I think Lamar is probably more into the game than Meta, where, like, I don't think he's going to quit like Meta did. I feel like he's actually going to at least try to play the game. It's just that I don't think he's going to play it well based on the things I know about him. So again, I do feel like this is such a weird casting choice to me, and someone that I don't think is going to do well, not a winner candidate. Next up, we got Misha Tate. No clue who this person was coming into this cast, outside of, again, hearing her in the rumor mill right beforehand. Again, UFC fighter. Seems like this season's version of Lolo Jones. And again, I'm kind of conflicted on her interviews. Again, does feel like she is someone that did do some studying for the season, but probably not to the point where she's one of the more well-informed people on the cast. She does openly talk about how she's not good socially, so that's probably not a great sign. But obviously she should be very good in physical competitions. But she does seem to be one of the more cutthroat players. Like, she does seem like she's there to play the game, at least. So again, that's something I'll give her credit for. But again, I don't know how well integrated she's going to be in this cast, where to me, I kind of see an initial power structure just looking on the offset from this cast. And while I would not be surprised if Misha ends up getting into that, especially if she ends up winning like the first HOH, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. Like, I think she's someone that could do well, but I also feel like she's someone that is definitely one of the more threatening people on the cast from a physical standpoint, if not the most threatening. I feel like that might be a target on her, unless she's perceived to be like this massive goat like Lolo Jones was. But again, for me, again, not someone I'm really looking at as a winner candidate. Next up, we got Mirai Nagasu, former Olympian, who, again, this is one of these people that like I've heard of, like I've seen her name before, didn't know much actually about her, but coming into this cast, again, she's another one of these people that I'm feeling pretty decent about. Again, she's someone that is one of the bigger fans on the season, seems to have at least watched the show. Again, doesn't seem like they're like a massive super fan by any means, but seems to have watched the show. I mean, does talk about how much they love Meta World Peace, which is like, I don't know if that's the greatest sign, but I do feel like Mirai here comes off as someone that could be a very good all-around player, where by the way that she talks about the game, I feel like she is probably coming into this being one of the better strategic thinkers. I think the question for me is how cutthroat is she going to be? Like, I don't know if she has like the killer instinct to like cut her closest ally at the end if she needs to, if they are going to end up beating her at the end. Like, I don't know if that's the type of gameplay we're going to see from Mirai, but I do feel like she seems like a decent strategic thinker. Being a figure skater, you would assume that she would be good at certain competitions. And then socially, she seems fine. Like, obviously, we're not going to really know until we see her in action. But again, like, to me, she seems like a fine all-around player. She seems like a pretty likable person. And for me, that's enough to have her as a potential winner candidate. Next up, we got Shauna Mokler, who is, again, another person that, like, I've seen her name before, but didn't really know exactly what she was famous for. Which I'm pretty sure in retrospect was probably because she was married to Travis Barker. But Shauna here is actually, I believe, the biggest fan on this cast. Maybe outside of this certain person that we'll be talking about later on, but even that person's a more recent fan, where Shauna talks about having watched the show for years, even watching Survivor. Like, she seems like a legitimate fan of the social strategy games. And I feel like because that is something that is probably the biggest pro for her, because outside of that, I don't really have much else positive to say. Yeah, I think she's someone that seems like she's going to be pretty messy. To me, she feels like kind of a casting choice similar to someone like a Brandi Glanville to me, which is ironic considering there's actual housewives on this cast, yet they don't feel as similar to Brandi Glanville to me as Shauna does here. But again, like, to me, Shauna feels like someone that's going to be a bit of a messy player. Now, I will say that I probably have more faith in Shauna because of her being a fan. So, because I do think there is a lot of potential upside. However, for me, I just feel like there is also a lot of downside. Because I feel like she could be one of these people that comes in a bit too aggressively and overplays her hand. And if it's not that getting in her way, her personality, which she openly talks about how loud she is, again, that's probably not great either. Like, I feel like there's a lot of potential downsides for Shauna. So while there is the upside of her probably knowing the game better than most of the other people here, I do feel like those downsides for me are big enough to not have her as a winner candidate. Next up, we got Teddy Mellencamp, who, again, don't know this person, never heard of this person my entire life. Now, I know that she is the daughter of John Cougar Mellencamp, but I barely knew who he was either. But Teddy here, like, she seems fine. I mean, I really have very little to say about Teddy. To be honest, Teddy's probably one of the people that I have the least read on, like, where she seems like a very average house guest here. Now, I will say that in terms of her Real Housewives background, from what I understand, she was fired for being boring. And even if that isn't the case, then she is known for not being interesting TV. So I think that is underwhelming. And also, again, what makes this a very questionable casting choice to me, especially when we have another housewife already here. Like, why do we need two? And also, with one of them being one that's notoriously boring. But that's not necessarily a bad sign for her gameplay wise. Now, I will say that from reading her interview, again, like, I didn't really get much from her. Like, she just kind of came off as kind of wishy-washy to me, where she seemed to, like, have watched the show, but, like, didn't really know it that well. I mean, she does mention how, like, oh, I can't win the first HOH, which is, again, such a misguided notion. To me, like, it seems like she's running on old information, possibly. I, for the most part, like, don't have that many issues with her, really. Again, like, she just seems like a very baseline player, like a player that is good enough to not be terrible, but not one that I have much faith in doing well, but also wouldn't be that surprised if she does have a deeper run on the season. But again, not really someone I'm considering as a winner candidate. Next up, we got Todd Bridges, who, again, didn't know who this person was. I mean, now after doing research, I know he's the person being talked about in the line, "What you talking about, Willis?" I mean, that's something. I've never watched Different Strokes my entire life. But also, why is he on this cast? Like, he's another one. Doesn't seem to know what he's doing here. He doesn't seem to know the show. He doesn't seem to care about the show. Like, he is another one that gives, like, one sentence responses to all the questions, and even talks about his open dislike of people. To me, it's like, it's so weird that he's on there. Like, I will say that it does seem like he's there for the money, which, again, could be a good or bad thing. That could mean that he really wants to win because he needs the prize money, or it could mean that he's just not going to care because he already got the massive stipend. But either way, I'm not feeling good about Todd Bridges. Again, to me, he definitely feels like someone that is kind of out of his element. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be an early boot, because I can definitely see potential for him being dragged along as a GOAT. However, I just find it very hard to believe that they're going to award him with the win at the end. So because that, not really someone I'm considering as a winner candidate. And the final person here is the most humorous to me of them all. Here we do have Todrick Hall, who, again, before BB23, never heard of this person in my entire life. I still don't know really who he is in terms of what he's famous for. I know he does videos of him singing and dancing. I have no clue who this person is. Again, the entire situation of him letting the BB23 cast live in his house for like over a month is just hilarious. And like, it's hilarious because like, obviously at the time, like the things that were brought up were like, oh, he's doing this because he's going to be on Celebrity Big Brother. And like, that just felt like a joke at the time. But like, now it's a reality. Like, this is actually the world that we live in, where Todrick Hall is on Celebrity Big Brother after having just openly let Big Brother people stay at his house. Like, this is just so bizarre. But again, like, I feel okay about Todrick. I will say, out of the interviews, his was by far the most informative to me on how he's approaching the game. However, there's a couple negatives I do want to mention here, namely the fact that he did have these BB23 people stay at his house, which to me, if he is so open with that, knowing that he's going to be on Celebrity Big Brother, that does make me question his strategic thinking and him thinking that like that's a good thing to just let everyone know. Mind you, I don't know how much it's going to matter because again, like I don't think most of this cast knows Big Brother and is following the social media activity during BB23 to know that he was doing that. But still, like, to me, like that's probably a negative sign in terms of his overall strategic thinking, that this was such an openly talked about thing across the Big Brother community. I do also know that there are some controversies around him before the show that, again, I don't know too much about, but that probably doesn't scream out to me that will be a very playable figure. However, again, I do feel like he is set up pretty well on this cast. I mean, one, we do know that he knows Carson, so obviously that's like a naturally ingrained alliance there. I also feel like he's someone that, like, I can very much see him getting along with like the housewives here. I could see him getting along with the Mirais of the world, the Lamars, the Shaunas of the world, and the Mishas of the world. Like, he has this like singing connection with Kirkpatrick. Like, to me, like, I feel like Todrick Hall is probably one of the better insulated people on this cast in terms of who I could see him connecting to. And we're adding on to that he's also one of the younger people on the cast, but not young enough to the point where I think it's going to be a massive detriment to him in terms of respect. And also the fact that he is a fan of Big Brother, and I feel like could be a solid all-around player. Like, he's definitely someone I'm thinking of as a winner candidate. But there we go. I mean, that is the cast. And with that, I've narrowed down my winner candidates to Carson Cressley, Cynthia Bailey, Mirai Nagasu, and Todrick Hall. And first up, I'm going to actually cut the person who was actually my initial winner pick when I first saw the cast, and that is Carson Cressley, who I still think there's a lot of potential for him to do very well. However, I think he's probably also primed to be looked at as a more sketchy figure. And while I don't have much faith in the Celebrity Big Brother cast to catch on to that, I feel like that's something that could potentially play a factor if he were to go home early. So again, I'm deciding to cut him first. Next up, I'll probably cut Mirai, who I really like. And also, again, just seems like a really likable person. Seems like someone that could be a well-rounded player. But to me, the other two options feel like people that are going to be better insulated just naturally within the game. So again, I'm going to cut her there, which leaves me between Cynthia and Todrick. And I'll be honest, like, I probably think Cynthia has more overall win equity and is someone that I think is probably more consistent in the game, someone that I would probably have more faith in just naturally. But screw it. Let's make this fun. I'm going to pick Todrick Hall. Mainly because I think it'll be funny if Todrick Hall wins Celebrity Big Brother after all the rumors that happened after BB23. Again, it would just be hilarious to me. And also, again, I still think Todrick Hall is also very well positioned in the game. I do think he's a bit more high variance. Again, I think there is some potential, like Shannon Elizabeth downside to him, of him being this fan that plays a bit too aggressively early on, and because of that becomes a big threat and is targeted right away. I think there is some potential for that. And again, for me, Cynthia, I think she's a much more playable figure all around. I think she's someone that is probably going to be more consistent in the game. Feels like someone that would also do very well against a Celebrity Big Brother jury, where like I feel like Todrick could potentially burn some votes along the way, kind of in a similar way to like a Ross Matthews, to where I could see Todrick being one of these people that has people that don't want to vote for him because of him playing too aggressively. But like, again, it's Celebrity Big Brother. Who cares? I mean, last time I went with Tom Green, despite me not thinking Tom Green was going to do that well, just because I thought it'd be funny to see Tom Green win Celebrity Big Brother. I'm going to do the same thing here. We're picking Todrick. Well, there we go. I mean, that is my cast assessment for Celebrity Big Brother 3. Now, obviously, I will be doing a season review once the season is done. I won't be doing my normal mid-season power ranking as this season's 3 weeks long. But I will be doing a player ranking, probably at least after the season. Kind of an issue with that is that we're going to have like Survivor 42, Big Brother Canada, and Australian Survivor all going on at the same time. So I'm expecting videos for that to kind of overlap with the ending of Celebrity Big Brother. So again, I'm not entirely sure when the player ranking will be out, but I do intend on doing one. So stay tuned for that. Technically, this video is an extra video also. Like, this is actually a video that I didn't initially have on the schedule, but because of that, I did bump the video that was supposed to be today onto Wednesday, which will be a Big Brother What If video. Stay tuned for that. And the video that was going to be a Wednesday video, I moved to Tuesday because it's a video game video and no one cares about it anyway, so it's fine. But yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts on the Celebrity Big Brother cast. Now, like I've said in the past, again, I will be talking about the season on Twitch at twitch.tv/TheReigning on Wednesday nights for sure. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the season along the way, you can keep up with me there. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.